let's move over to the defense, Ryan. And this class was interesting because unfortunately, this is going to be the class that people look at as the what if group, much, much more so than the offense, because people in their heads are just not going to be able to get three names out of their heads: Keon Keeley, Jason Moore, and Peyton Bowen. And that's understandable. We're not going to focus on them during this show. So what I want you all to try to do the best you can is for us to talk about what this class is for the purposes of the rest of this show. So in the chat, and we're having this conversation, let's talk about what is, not what, but what if. Okay, so we're going to focus on what is. What is this is an outstanding group of players. This is an outstanding haul. I gave it a B+ because I don't think it's quite a top 5 group, but I think it's without question a top 10 group, in my opinion, from a defensive staff or defensive haul standpoint. The reason it didn't quite get into that A-8 territory, Ryan, is because I felt that they needed a little bit more certainty up front. Yeah. And I would have liked to have had an edge rusher. Now, so that you all understand the purposes of this, talking to some different sources, basically what happened in the last 24 hours with the Peyton Bowen situation has solidified where Brandon Hillman's going to start his career, and that's going to be safety. So when we're talking about this class, we're talking about Notre Dame getting Brandon Hillman and playing him at safety, which was always a possibility.
Yep.
So keep that in mind. I like the numbers at safety. I think that's a position you could have maybe had a little bit more impact talent. I think you could argue that you need an edge. I think the floor to ceiling gap in the 4 defensive linemen are the things that have me having it down as a B+ as opposed to an A- or an A. That's the reason I gave them. I think you could argue for A-. I'm not quite ready to go there for those. Those are the reasons really I look at it and say that's where this group is for me.
And I'm not going to push too much on the grade, honestly, Brian, because I completely understand your opinion on it, right? I mean, because there's a lot of peaks and valleys to this class, right? There's a lot of variance. There's a lot of potential. And I mean, you mentioned this before, though, on this podcast, I believe, that if you can guarantee that all Notre Dame's players on the defensive side of the football hits, then this is a top 5 class. Like, there's no doubt about it, right? But it's just up front, especially, there's just too much variance to how good this group could be, right? It could be stellar, guys. And I'm writing an article right now about this, the fact that the defensive line, I believe, is the make it or break it group for this class in general, in my opinion. Like, I do think that, because it could be fantastic or it could just be meh, right? It could be depth at that point. It's got, toolsies guys that maybe when they're 4th or 5th year guys really add a lot to your game. Like more like Adiag and Ogundiji, like that type of player, right?
Right. There's a lot of him in this class.
Yes.
That's a great example of what you're talking about, Ryan.
I think there is a lot of that in this class. And it gets you excited because as a football guy and as a former coach, I look at that and say, I would love to work with Armand Mukum. I would love to work with Boubacar Traore. I can get the best out of that guy. But the fact of the matter is that all those guys are not going to hit. It's never going to happen. And that's every school. It's not just a Notre Dame thing. There are 5-stars on every team every single year that do not hit, that don't become the guys that they are because for whatever reason, whether it's a mental thing, whether it's a coaching thing, whatever, they don't reach their potential. So not every player Notre Dame has is going to hit. The one thing I'll say about it, though, Brian, from a positive perspective is, yes, I think it's still a very good class. And one thing I'll say is, did Notre Dame get more athletic and longer at every level of the defense? No doubt, right? Like, the talent is easy to see. There's no question that Al Washington, Al Golden, Chris O'Leary, Mike Mickens, they're going to have some talents to work with. There's no doubt about that.